All right, we are live. Thank you for joining in today at the Speak Outstanding English YouTube channel. It's been a while since we've had a live lesson, and I'm trying out some new software, so if there are a few bugs or a few hiccups, please bear with me. But for today, we're going to go over some very useful and often confusing related word pairs. And these related word pairs are adjectives that end in ent and their noun versions that end in ence. So as I was correcting some student work last week, I noticed a few of them having difficulties figuring out which one to use. So I thought that would be inspiration for this evening's lesson. So first up, let's go into our mini whiteboard over here. I have different right here. This is our adjective. It ends in ent, and the noun form ends in ence, difference. And of course, as we go through these, we'll be going through some simpler ones first, some more common ones, and as we go through our list of 14 different word pairs, we'll be getting into more and more challenging words. So if this is a little too easy for you, maybe come back in like 4 or 5 minutes. So with different, we can talk about two things being different. And if something's not very different, you might say instead of it's a little different, you could say it is slightly different or it is subtly different. And we use subtly to say that maybe how it is different is very difficult to see. Maybe two paintings are subtly different. Remember that B is silent. So as we see these two paintings, it might be very difficult to see how they are different. Now, sometimes things are not slightly different or subtly different. They are completely different, right? They are completely different. That's a useful collocation here. And if things are completely different, they could also be radically different. We usually use radically different when we're talking about a design change, when from one generation to the next, it has a huge change. So for example, the Nintendo Switch 2 and the first Nintendo Switch are not radically different. There's not much of a difference between them. However, a jump from, say, the old Nintendo Game Boy versus the Nintendo Switch, well, they are radically different. So one common question we use with different are, how are these two things different? Or how is this different from that? So when we're using difference, this is our noun version, we often hear the phrase, the key difference. And the key difference would be the most important difference between two things. So if you're looking at the new Apple Neo, is it called the Apple Neo laptop versus the Apple MacBook Air, what's the key difference is the processor on the Air is more powerful than the MacBook Neo. There are smaller differences, like maybe the screen is brighter on the other, the battery life is different, but the key difference would be the processor. And you wouldn't notice that until you start using a lot of different apps at the same time. So we'll often use the question, what are the differences between two different things? So what are the differences between and any two items? And you often hear someone use the expression, what's the price difference between the two models? So if you're comparing two things that are kind of similar, someone might ask, what's the price difference? To know how much of a jump there is in price from a base model to maybe a pro model. And then we have a very useful collocation here. We got pay or make up the difference. And this one's really useful. You'll hear this a lot whenever there's a gap between what someone can pay and the remaining balance. So maybe if you go to the card store and your son wants to buy a box of Pokemon cards and he only brought maybe $25, but the box is $30, you may pay the difference or make up the difference, means he would pay his $25 and you would pay the remaining $5. You would make up the difference or you would pay the difference. Another useful expression we have here is to reconcile. This is a pretty advanced one, reconcile or settle one's differences. So when we reconcile our differences, or when we settle our differences or reconcile our differences, it means we end a disagreement or argument, usually by finding a compromise and reaching an understanding. So maybe you had a fight with your coworker and you reconciled your differences. You figured out what the problem was and made a compromise and reached an understanding. So you could say reconcile your differences or settle your differences. Those are very useful ones to know. And then our next special pair of adjectives and nouns are silent and silence. So silent, there's our adjective, and silence, that is our noun, ence. So this would be not making any sound or a complete absence of sound. You might hear someone say, the room was silent. All right. And there are some useful verbs that collocate with silent. We could say that a room falls or goes silent. So when a room falls silent, that's when it suddenly becomes quiet after it has been noisy. So you could say, the classroom fell silent, or the classroom went silent, using past tense here. And this just means there was a lot of noise, that maybe the teacher came into the room and now it is silent. So the classroom fell silent or the classroom went silent. So those are useful collocations to know. It seems the red doesn't erase so nicely, so I'm going to put this aside to make sure I don't use red again. All right, and if we're using silence, we could say there was silence in the room. There's a little example sentence for you. And here are some useful collocations. We can have or observe a moment of silence. And when we observe or have a moment of silence, this means you take a moment for everybody to be quiet, for all work to stop, and it usually lasts for a minute, and it is to honor someone who passes away or to show respect for a tragic event. So if someone in the office unfortunately passes away, maybe you'll observe a moment of silence in the office where everything will go quiet for a short period of time, usually a minute, and all work will stop to have a moment of silence or to observe a moment of silence. And another useful collocation here is a hushed silence. You'll see this one a lot in writing, in different literature. And a hushed silence occurs when people are waiting for something important, like before a performance or an announcement or the start of a ceremony. So the writer might say there was a hushed silence in the crowd. So maybe there was a lot of talking and then suddenly the lights in the theater went dim and there was a hushed silence in the crowd because they were anticipating or waiting for the concert to start. And then our next special collocation with silence is an awkward silence. All right, so an awkward silence is when two people or more than two people are having a conversation and then suddenly that conversation becomes really quiet. We call it an awkward silence. And during an awkward silence, the people might feel a little anxious. And this happens because the pause in the conversation, the little break in the conversation, is lasting too long than it really should. So that is an awkward silence. And then our next special one is to break the silence. This is another good collocation, to break the silence. And what this means is that when you break the silence, you start talking after a long period of quiet. Now it could just be because the room is quiet, so you finally break the silence. Or it could be to finally talk about some important or long hidden subject, like a taboo subject with someone, would be to break the silence. So maybe something terrible happened and nobody in the family talks about it, but to break the silence would be to finally start talking about it again, to break the silence. So that's it for silent and silence. Our next special pair of words is convenient and convenience, our noun form. All right, so we got our ence noun and our ent adjective. And this just means, of course, easy or useful for your situation, to be convenient. And if something has convenience, it's the quality of being useful or easy. So we often talk about something, an appointment maybe having a convenient time. Or maybe a convenient location. All right, so maybe you choose to go to one movie theater instead of another because it has a convenient location. Maybe it's closer to your home, or it has the MRT or subway stop right nearby, so it has a convenient location. And then with convenience, we have a few useful collocations. We got for your convenience. For your convenience. And you'll often see this as kind of serving as a polite or professional way to show that something is designed to make a task or a process easier or faster or more efficient for you. So maybe if the hotel you're staying at has a small office you can use, they might say that there is a printer that guests can use for your convenience, right? To make your stay easier and to make any work you do at the hotel more convenient, right? So it is for your convenience. Another one you might hear often is at your convenience. So if someone says something is at your convenience, it just means at a time or place that suits you. So let's say you bring your car to a mechanic and they call you at work and say it is done. They might then say you can pick it up anytime at your convenience before we close. So that means you could go there right away, or you could go there, just minutes before they close. You can get it anytime at your convenience. Another common collocation is modern conveniences. And modern conveniences are the devices or things we use that make our lives easier or more efficient. So a modern convenience would be something like, a washing machine in your home. It saves a lot of time that could have been spent washing clothes. It is a modern convenience. Maybe having a credit card tied with your phone is a modern convenience. It allows you to not carry so many things with you and to be able to pay for something quickly. It is a modern convenience. So after convenient and convenience, our next special pair is intelligent and intelligence. We got intelligent. That's our adjective. And intelligence. That is our noun. All right, ence, noun. All right, so this just means the ability to think, understand, and learn well or easily, right? So one common collocation, instead of saying very intelligent, if you're tired of saying very, you can say someone is highly intelligent, right? Someone is highly intelligent. She's a highly intelligent student. He's a highly intelligent worker. And then with intelligence, we have the common collocation to demonstrate intelligence. And this is just another way, running out of space, there we go. This just means to show intelligence, to demonstrate intelligence. So maybe if you're designing a task, does it help demonstrate intelligence? If you're a teacher and you have your students do something, does the task allow the students to demonstrate their intelligence, which just means to show their intelligence. All right, so I didn't have many collocations I wanted to use for intelligent and intelligence. Now we're getting into a good one here. We have confident. Confident, our adjective, and confidence, our noun. All right, so this just means to be sure, feel sure about your ability, or to believe in yourself, or to believe in someone or something. So I could say that I feel confident, right? Feel confident. And we can also feel confident about something. So I might say I'm feeling confident about tomorrow's test. Means I think that I have studied enough for it and that I will get a good grade. I feel confident about it. When we're using confidence, we have a few good collocations here. We can build or gain confidence. All right, so this would be, taking action to kind of build your abilities and skills so that you feel like you can do something very well. So students might ask, how can I build my confidence? And there's some things you could do. Maybe you can practice talking in front of a mirror. That can help build your confidence. Or you can join some competitions so that when a very important one comes, you've already practiced enough times that you've gained enough confidence that you'll do well when it really matters. Another useful one is to boost confidence, And another one we have is to have confidence and then in somebody or something. So this just means to trust or rely on or feel sure about someone or something. So let's say you've just hired someone new in your company and someone asks how they are doing. And you say, oh, you have confidence in them. Means you think that they will be successful in your company. So that's our confident and confidence, adjective and noun right there. And the next one we're going to do is patient. There's our adjective, and patience, ending in ence, is our noun form. So this is the ability to stay calm, especially while waiting. And we often use the expression to be patient with, and then someone or something. So I could say, if you want to be a successful teacher, well, you have to be patient with students because not everyone learns at the same speed. And if we're talking about patience, some useful collocations include have patience, right? He has a lot of patience. However, sometimes we lose or run out of patience. All right, so maybe you stop being calm and start to become annoyed or frustrated because of delays or annoyances or waiting or a noisy classroom. You lose your patience or you run out of patience. And then this is a good one when talking about teaching, and that is to test one's patience. Now, what does it mean to test one's patience? This means to annoy or frustrate or provoke someone, usually through the same slow behavior or repeated behavior or irritating actions to try to get them to their limit, to try to get them to lose their patience or run out of patience. So this is really common for first-year teachers. The students may try to test your patience. But don't worry, because with every year, the students start to know you better because they've seen you in the building. So there'll be fewer and fewer cases of students testing your patience. All right, so good job there. That's our next batch of ENT, ENCE word pairs. Our next one, all right, now we're getting into probably the B1, B2 level stuff. So we got independent, our ENT adjective, and independence, our ENCE one. Are you Tom Cruise? No, I'm not. All right, here we go. Let me highlight this. I'm new to this software, so I'm sorry if I'm kind of slow answering this. No, I'm not. I'm not Tom Cruise. He's my uncle. All right, so here we go. We got independent and independence, and this is, for independent to be not controlled by anyone or others and not relying on others. Same with independence, that's freedom from control. So we may say that someone is financially, that's a common collocation, financially independent. And that just means they don't rely on any family members for money, or they don't rely on the government for money. They are financially independent. And we also have a good collocation here in independent thinker. And this one comes up quite often, and this describes an individual who forms their own opinions or solutions based on their own thinking and evaluation, and rather than just taking everyone else's view or accepting peer pressure, they kind of come up with their own solutions on their own or have their own opinions. They are not really, they don't really get their opinions from others. They come up with their own opinions on their own. So that is two useful collocations with independent. And then over here with independence, we may gain independence. Whoa, oopsie daisy. May gain, oh, now it became ugly. Sorry about that. May gain independence. Or declare independence. So when a territory declares independence, they are saying we are no longer a part of that country. And when you gain independence, or a country is no longer controlled by another country. So a colony is no longer controlled by another country. So I think India gained independence, I believe, in 1947. The United States gained independence in 1776. Another one is just like before, we have financial independence. All right, so once you are working on your own and not relying on others to pay your bills, you have financial independence. And another one we'll see often is an independence movement. All right, and this is when a group of people want to govern themselves, form their own government and not be controlled by a foreign rule, a foreign power, or a colonial power, or a larger state. So there might be an independence movement to break away part of the country from the rest of the country. So those are some useful collocations with independence. So that's enough of these two special word pairs. All right, let me clean it up a little here. And then our next two, all right, more of our B2 level stuff. We got violent. Gonna get ugly. We got violent. All right, our ent, and violence. All right, that is our noun. So we got our adjective and our noun here. And we'll see with violent, that just means involving physical force or harm, and violence, physical force used to hurt people or against people. So you'll see phrases like a violent attack or a violent crime. Some crime is non-violent crimes where nobody is physically hurt, but a violent crime is where someone is actually hurt. Or a violent storm would describe something like a typhoon or a hurricane or a thunderstorm where there's strong winds, there's heavy rains, and maybe a lot of thunder and lightning. All right, so here we go. Let's see what we got here. I'm eating KFC, and KFC is American, so I'm boosting America's economy. Please thank me. Well, thank you so much. I hope you enjoy your KFC. And then for violence, our noun form, you may come across the collocation political violence, or violence against a group. All right, so you'll see these often when reading news stories. And if there's a sudden surge of violence, maybe there's because of a political conflict or unrest or riots, we could say there is an outbreak of violence, or a flare-up of violence. Those are pretty common, of violence. So if you can imagine, if a country is unstable, there might be flare-ups of violence or outbreaks of violence. And political violence would be, maybe leaders getting assassinated or killed because different groups are fighting for who can control the country. So that is our adjective violent and our noun violence, our two word pairs ending in ent and ence. And the next one we got is absent. Absent, our adjective, and absence. All right, our whoopsies, absence, there we go, ence. All right, absence right there. And this just means not present or the state of not being present. So you could be absent from school, absent from work. You didn't show up. Maybe you were sick. Maybe you were skipping. But we have a useful expression to be absent-minded. And this means having or being being forgetful or inattentive. So someone who forgets things a lot or doesn't pay attention too often, we can say that he or she is absent-minded. And then for our collocations with absence, we can say in one's absence. And that means to do something while someone is away. So maybe in someone's absence, you voted and made a decision without them in someone's absence. So over here, we got a little question. It says, what's the difference between patience and patient? Patience ends in ence, that is a noun. He has a lot of patience. She has a lot of patience. And patient is an adjective. So he is patient. She is patient. That is the difference between patience and patient. So in addition to in one's absence, we may also say someone takes or has an unexplained absence. Unexplained absence. So this means that someone was absent, they weren't there, and nobody knows why, or they didn't tell you why. So you might see this in, like, celebrity news where somebody is kind of hiding for a while. Maybe they're kind of living under a rock. Maybe they had some poor reviews, so they're not making any public appearances, but then they come out and they attend maybe a premiere, and nobody asks them, or somebody asks them about their unexplained absence, and maybe they beat around the bush and don't explain where they were this whole time. Maybe they were just relaxing, and it's probably none of our business anyways where they were. So now we're getting into our next batch of adjective-noun pairs that end in ent and ence. And we got innocent, 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 ends in ent, so it's an adjective, and innocence, ence, that is our noun. So this just means not guilty of a crime or wrongdoing, to be innocent, and it can also mean to not know about mature things. And innocence is the state of being, not guilty and not knowing about bad or mature things. So we might say someone is an innocent victim. An innocent victim. This just means, there was a crime committed, and the victim is the one who was affected by the crime. And if they were an innocent victim, they did nothing wrong, but they were the victim of a crime. We also talk about, an innocent mistake. You make a mistake, and it was, it obviously wasn't purposeful, but it was just a small mistake. It was an innocent mistake. Maybe, in my case, maybe I accidentally called one student the name of another student. It's an innocent mistake. All right, so if we're talking about innocence, some useful collocations, you'll see this in like court dramas. That is to prove innocence. And this just means to demonstrate, in legally, that you did not commit a crime. Maybe you have a CCTV camera footage. Maybe you have an alibi where someone says that they saw you somewhere else. You prove your innocence. Another one is a loss, or I'm sorry, to lose one's innocence. All right, and this one's a little more complicated. This means that someone really kind of comes of age and goes from being maybe a naive child to someone having a more mature understanding of reality. So this we use this when talking about if someone experiences something evil or painful or a harsh truth, which makes them lose their childhood innocence and start to have a mature understanding of the real world. That is innocent and innocence right here. All right, so my next one, we're gonna go over here. We got a question. All right, can I do it? Yes, there we go. What's beat beat a bush. I think that was when I said beat around the bush. So beat around the bush is an idiom, and it means to talk about everything but that particular topic. So maybe if something maybe embarrassing happens, maybe there's an incident at work and you know that they're embarrassed about it, so you don't talk about that subject directly. You talk about every other subject around it. You're beating around the bush. That means to talk about every subject but the most important topic, usually, but the most important topic. It's to beat around the bush. So maybe if the company's failing and everything's going to shut down soon, but instead of talking about that, you're talking about, subjects that have nothing to do with that, even though that's the most important topic. So that is beat around the bush. I think I made a short about that like 3 years ago or something like that, a long time ago, back when I was doing shorts pretty frequently. So we got our next two. We're getting into the really high level stuff. I think we're getting close to C1 level adjective noun pairs here. We got prominent, our adjective, and prominence. Oh, that's a hard one. Okay. So to be prominent means to be important, famous, or noticeable. And prominence is the state of being important, famous, or noticeable. So we talk about maybe having a prominent role. Prominent, oh, that's so hard for me. Prominent role. And this could be talking about someone in a job position. They have a prominent role in the company. They have a very important position in the company. Or it could be talking about like someone in a movie. Like maybe an actor has a prominent role in the movie. Means they're on the screen a lot in that movie. They're not the main star, but maybe they have a prominent role. They're on the screen a lot. And then prominence, we have a couple useful ones. We got to rise to prominence. Prominence, okay. So to rise to prominence is when a person or an idea becomes widely known or popular or influential. You could talk about, a politician rising to prominence after, a really good speech, or a company rising to prominence because they're able to do better than their competitors. And in addition to rise to prominence, we can say somebody gains prominence. And this is similar, to become widely noticeable or important and recognized over time, you gain prominence. So this is our prominent and prominence adjective and noun pair. Not too many collocations for that one. And I got a few more here. Let me see. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 3 more. So our next one is resilient. Now we're getting into more C1 stuff. Resilient. All right, ENT, adjective. And resilience. Resilience, our noun version. All right, so when we're talking about being resilient, it means to be able to recover quickly from a difficulty. And resilience is just the ability to recover or get better from any challenge, right? Or illness. So often, instead of saying very resilient, we'll use the collocation, let's go with orange, highly, to be highly resilient. Resilient. And one common collocation, you'll see it a lot these days, is whether or not your country has a resilient economy. And to have a resilient economy means that your economy can withstand or recover from any kinds of shocks. So right now, maybe the price of oil goes up. Does the economy go down as a result? Or is it a resilient economy where a shock like this won't affect the economy much? To have a resilient economy. And when we're talking about resilience, we got, let me see, I'm going to do 2 special collocations here. We talk about build resilience. And so this would be to be able to adapt better than you did before to build your resilience. And a good expression is to demonstrate or show resilience in the face of adversity. All right. So to demonstrate resilience in the face of adversity means to adapt well and bounce back and grow stronger, especially after experiencing any kind of trauma or tragedy or threats or any kind of real significant stress. We could say that somebody demonstrates resilience in the face of adversity. So that's it for our resilient and resilience pair. All right, I got two more here. The next one is another C1 level, I think. We got eloquent, to be eloquent, our adjective, and eloquence, our noun. So to be eloquent means to be able to speak clearly and persuasively, and eloquence is the same, the ability to speak clearly and persuasively, or to write clearly and persuasively. So we could say that somebody gave an eloquent speech. You know, they use language very fluently and persuasively and clearly to create a lasting impression. And we may call someone an eloquent speaker, right? They speak with eloquence. And that was the one I wanted to say over here. Somebody speaks, to speak with eloquence. Common collocation you'll hear. And somebody might have remarkable eloquence. So have remarkable eloquence. Let's make that L nice. Eloquence. All right, next time I'll bring a towel too. So the word remarkable means to be, if something is worth your attention, it is remarkable, right? So to have remarkable eloquence means to have this extraordinary ability to communicate with a lot of fluency, power, and grace. So excellent with those. And my next one here, our next adjective noun pair is negligent. Oh, this one's a hard one. Negligent. That's our adjective. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's our adjective and our noun, negligence. All right, so this is, to be negligent means to not be careful when you should be, or to have negligence means failure to take proper care. So we may describe somebody as a negligent driver. You'll see this a lot, you know, a negligent driver. This is someone who fails to take any proper care when they're driving. Maybe they're speeding in a school zone, right? They are a negligent driver. You often see the expression negligent behavior. Right? Negligent behavior. Someone who's doing something without any care. Or negligent conduct. This would be someone who doesn't exercise any reasonable care. So why was the person fired? He was fired for negligent conduct. He did not take any care he didn't put any care into his work. Maybe something that caused someone to get hurt or made the company, lose money. Negligent conduct. So negligence here, these are often used in courtrooms. So we have criminal negligence. This would be someone doing something so terrible, being very, very reckless and someone getting hurt. Criminal negligence would be doing something like leaving a baby in a hot car or having a dangerous dog and it's not on a leash or chain outside your house, right? That is criminal negligence. Another one you'll read about is medical negligence. And this would be where a healthcare professional, like a doctor or a nurse or a pharmacist, doesn't exercise care and it leads to some kind of bad injury or even death. So if a patient says repeatedly that they're allergic to a particular kind of medicine, but they're given it anyways, that would be medical negligence. And then our next one is gross negligence. And we usually think of gross as being a synonym for disgusting, right? That's so gross. But in this case, gross means very obvious and unacceptable. So very obvious and unacceptable negligence. So an example of this would be, say, a pilot comes to fly a plane and he smells like alcohol, he's drunk, right? This is gross negligence. It's a reckless disregard for the safety or the lives of others. All right, so these are the last of our adjective noun pairs that end in ENT and ENCE. Let me jump over here. Okay, so we got a comment here. Oh, it got cut off when I put it here. Let me try to move it. Okay, it gets cut off. But it says, can you suggest a topic to write upon? I'm new to learning English and want to polish my writing. So if you're looking for a topic to write about, I would suggest first starting with topics you already know a lot about. And then after you've done that, maybe put your sample. If you don't have a teacher you can show it to or a language partner, I would suggest typing it out and putting it into an AI program like ChatGPT and asking for suggestions on how to improve your writing sample. So that would be the first thing I would do. All right, well, and I got one more here. Is this going to show up? I don't know. Maybe. Okay, here it is. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for showing up today. But that's it for tonight's lesson. Thanks to everyone who came in. I hope to do this again in the future. So everybody, keep on working hard and grinding, and your English will become excellent in the future. All right? Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.